JKB back with another episode. Today on the show, I'm reviewing sort of an updated review of Rayman Legends. The definitive edition just came out for the Nintendo Switch for $39.99, and I wanted to review it, so I asked Ubisoft. Thank you for the review copy, Ubisoft. This review, however, is just covering the definitive edition of the game. Now, I'll just say this right off the bat. The game is one of the best platforming games ever made under Super Mario Bros. But can you call this the definitive edition of the game? I don't know if that's exactly true here. I'm going to just cover the difference between this version and all the other ones, and I'm going to bring up something I thought was kind of strange. Now, on the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, there was absolutely no loading times, which at the time was spectacular. It, just meant you can go in and out of levels and just have this amazing flow to it. So when you have a lot of loading time, that really gets into the pacing of the game. The PlayStation Vita version of the game had the worst loading times, but now, I can't believe I'm saying this, in 2017, the Nintendo Switch version has the absolute worst loading times of the game. Now, is that a step backwards? Absolutely. However, I think I could take a wild guess on why this is happening. The Wii U version of the game was 6.7 gigabytes, and this version of the game on Switch is just 2.9. That is basically half of what it used to be. Now, I can understand why they did this. Number one, Nintendo Switch has limited memory unless you get expansion, so they wanted to get it as small as possible. The other reason I think they brought this down is because, well, they could do that and it's a portable version of the game. So they want more people to download the game as well. The compression rate on the game is obviously something that affects the size of the game. So at basically 3 gigabytes, the compression is ridiculous. So the loading times go directly into the game because of the compression. The game has to uncompress all of those files and load them into the memory to play it. So is this a nitpick? Yes, this is absolutely a nitpick. Now, on the Wii U version of the game, one of the biggest aspects that kind of made this game a lot of fun to play multiplayer was the use of the touchscreen. There's a character in the game known as Murray. He's a little flying dude that you can basically control using the touchscreen on the Wii U gamepad, and you move platforms, you cut wires, you could tickle the enemies, and then, the second player could come in there and stomp on their heads. That was amazing. So in multiplayer, you have one person with the touchpad going crazy, and the other person just using a, Wii U controller. And it was awesome. I mean, spectacular. But in multiplayer on this now, you can't do that. They've taken that out, and Murray is kind of dwindled down into, just the touch of a button. You push the button in multiplayer, and that's it. So that's kind of a disappointment as well. But moving on, that's another nitpick, because you could still, in single player, switch between the touchscreen because you're playing single, and then you can also just play it with the touch of a button. So Murray's effects still work in the game, but it kind of changes up just a little bit. Now, the cons of the game, obviously this is the longest loading times of any version, which is kind of a nitpick, but I had to point that out. They've removed features. The frame rate does kind of get affected here and there. It kind of just feels like a PlayStation 3 or an Xbox 360 port, which is kind of like such a backward step. Now, the pro is that this is the best platforming game below Super Mario. I mean, there's nothing else quite like this. I'm very disappointed that the game hasn't sold well. I'm going to still say that even after I pointed out this definitive version is not really the definitive version, if you haven't played it, go out there and buy it any way you can. PlayStation 4 and Xbox One have 0 loading times, so I recommend that. The music is some of the best music I've ever heard, period, in a game. I'm not overhyping that. If you know anybody that's played it, I think they'll agree. And the controls are smooth as butter. So I'm not going to rescore this. I still think the game is a perfect game in some versions. But this version here is definitely not the definitive version, because it feels a little held back by the fact that I think it's just a PlayStation 3 or an Xbox 360 port. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next episode of JKB.